Welcome to your readings for Thanksgiving week. 'Cause I think everybody here is, well, at least in the United States, celebrating. Whether you are celebrating or not is entirely up to you. But yes, I will just start off with an apology for last week. I got caught in a horrendous downpour of rain, which we don't usually get here in California very often, but we did. Starting 10 minutes before I clocked out of the airport and got soaked, completely soaked, just trying to get to my car because it was pouring. I mean, so much that it was bouncing back off the ground, and within 15 minutes, the entire parking lot where my car was completely underwater. And so yeah, literally just drenched. 2 days of work after that drenching just very quickly went downhill from there. And so, in any case, I apologize. I was sick all week last week, and I'm only just glad that I wasn't sick this week for the holiday because I have two Thanksgivings to cook this week. Two different dinners, 2 different days. So can't do that when you're sick. Anyways, let's get to these horoscopes to do a little bit of a recap. We're still in a Mercury retrograde this week. Mercury does go direct at the end of this week. So about Friday is when it actually goes direct. So we'll have another week. We're going into the first week of December, and then we're Mercury retrograde free. This has been kind of a strange one. Okay. I was really not looking forward to it because, of course, the first week was in Sagittarius. We moved into the Mercury retrograde being influenced by Scorpio last week, about midweek, which shifted the energy a little bit. Sagittarius is kind of like "Rah!" and in your face, whereas Scorpio is a little bit, it's more fixed. It's a little bit, it's more, kind of gonna sneak up on you than actually be in your face. Um, had some good money stuff going on, and yet an addition of more money worries at the same time. So this is kind of a little bit of a weird exchange there. But also really silly, stupid little things like, of course, phone's not working right, and miscommunications, and oops, I paid the wrong bill, not me, but my husband. So anyways, yeah, so it's been kind of an interesting I've seen a lot of really good things come out of this Mercury retrograde, opening up communications in terms of getting over problems. That's been really good. But of course, there's always the addition of more problems as well, or, thinking that you resolved something with communication that was not resolved at all because, there was issues within the communication. So that kind of stuff obviously is still happening. It's probably still going to be happening, but I really feel that the shift from Sagittarius to Scorpio really kind of smooth things over a little bit and made it not quite as intense as, say, it first was, or in the shadow period right before it started. Also, Mercury is in a grand trine and has been probably for the past couple of weeks in a grand trine with Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. So, that's definitely affecting our Cancer on the list for sure in good ways. So when Mercury is retrograde and kind of working with other planets for a good cause, it does sort of it creates space for certain things. For instance, right now Mercury is really focused on long-term goals, and usually it's good not to communicate about your plans, to kind of keep that to yourself. You know, it's like playing poker, right? You obviously don't want to give away, what your next move is. And I think in this instance, that's really a good thing because well, there's two things about that. First of all, the more you go around talking about it, the less likely you are able to, or you're actually going to do it. But also, I tend to look at it as, by keeping it to yourself and building it yourself. And Jupiter is also retrograde, focusing on your day-to-day schedule. So instead of adding more and more and more to that schedule, you're actually creating space and time to focus on these long-term goals. So to be honest with you, I feel like it's really looking at what you have going on and simplifying things to give yourself more time to really focus on those long-term goals because that's really important. Also, Mercury's in a grand sextile with Saturn and Neptune, as well as Pluto. That brings Aquarius into the mix as well, and opening things up for Aquarius in terms of taking responsibility, in terms of utilizing that intuition, and of course, really looking at those triggers, those things that are holding us back, right? Because that's really Pluto's focus really is on triggers in Aquarius right now. So we have a lot of really good stuff going on. I think that this last Mercury retrograde of the year, it's a little less scary than maybe we were thinking it was going to be. And I just have to say, because I have talked to a couple of people on the list about this, sometimes things don't work out for a reason, and that you'll find out later just why. So, don't get freaked out yet because, there's always a reason why things are the way they are. That makes sense. So, anyways, that's my spiel. Let's get to the readings. Gonna start with Darcy because that's just what we do. And what do we got? We've got Uranus retrograde 29 degrees in Taurus. So we're officially in Taurus now, back in Taurus, I should say. Now, so many planets interacting beautifully with that Mercury retrograde. Unfortunately, Scorpio is the opposite of Taurus. So we are looking at oppositions with the Sun, which is now officially in Sagittarius, with Venus, which is very close to being officially in Sagittarius, as well as that pesky Mercury retrograde, all in opposition with Uranus. Uranus's focus is on the mind and how the mind works. Now, Uranus is very much an out of the box, sort of a rebellious kind of influence. And when it's retrograde, it's sort of takes that rebellion down a few notches, if that makes sense, which Taurus, definitely known for stubbornness, can be a bit rebellious. Um, all of these planets in opposition with Uranus are focused on long-term goals, specifically long-term career goals here. So I'm gonna say that it's really not a good time to be focusing on any changes in that area, so to speak. And also looking at let me get to the beginning of the week here. Also looking at the moon, amplifying this just a little bit. Let me see here. Where are we? Well, maybe it will and maybe it won't. Yes, there it is. Amplifying this just a little bit on Thursday. Great. On the holiday. That sounds awesome. The moon amplifying this and bringing emotions to the surface on the holiday for you specifically. At the same time, though, this is fairly normal. You did say you're working on Thanksgiving, so I can see where that could be kind of sort of playing into it. But also, I think we get sort of a as much as I'm guilty of this too. It's sort of like I don't need the tradition, it's blah blah blah. But around the holiday, I do miss it. Honestly, I do miss it. I miss the camaraderie. I miss, I spent 20 some odd years going to my husband's family's house for Thanksgiving with his grandparents. Of course, they've been gone for many years now. the grandfather, almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years next year, which is kind of crazy. And so, still every single year I miss that. I pine for it in some ways. And even though like last year, for example, I worked at the airport on Thanksgiving, and I was hoping that that would just sort of kind of deter me from thinking about it. It was so dead boring that day. So I had nothing to do but sit around for 4 hours and think about how much I missed being where I used to be as opposed to now. So I think that really this is what's kind of behind things, and it's okay. I'm not saying that you're like wallowing in it and can't get through the day or anything, but it's okay to spend some time just letting your brain wander to the past when you were with family and Thanksgiving was, more of a big deal than say maybe it is right now. So, give yourself some credit and and do something to honor them, like maybe trying to make that steamed apple pudding, or something along those lines, if not something that complicated, something that you were used to having before that, you could throw together now, if that makes any sense at all. So, honestly, not much changes other than that one day. We do have Uranus in a couple of different grand sextiles. First one is between Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter. Now, Saturn's going to go direct actually this week by Friday. So it's been retrograde for a while. When Saturn is retrograde, it's really mirroring that responsibility back at you, either other people are putting their responsibilities of their shit on you, or you're holding on to responsibilities for things that you didn't do. And, it's kind of showing you that it's time to let these things go. When Saturn goes back to direct again, you may feel during this time in this week with Saturn going direct that wobble feeling of people trying to put responsibilities on you that aren't yours. So, you definitely want to be aware of that as much as you can. I see this mainly around the workplace, but let's face it, this has happened recently with, say your landlady and that situation with that guy, and you having to be the one to go to court and defend yourself for something that you didn't do, but she did, if that makes sense. So, luckily, we're sort of putting that back out there where responsibilities are, you take on your responsibilities and leave other people's responsibilities to them. But also, Saturn and Neptune are focused on self. So this is really about making yourself accountable responsibly, if that makes sense. And the moon comes in right at the end of the week. To be in conjunction with Saturn and Neptune as well. So it's just adding a little bit of magic to that. Uranus is also in a grand sextile with Saturn and Neptune and Pluto. Now, Pluto is pulling these triggers out. And so, while this is obviously a good thing, a grand sextile is the planets working together. It's actually you taking responsibility for what's yours, leaving the responsibility for what is not yours. And that, of course, helps you to release those triggers a lot faster and come to terms with things that happened that, quite frankly, you don't need to hold responsibility for any longer. Guilt, any of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of healing in all of this as well. So I think it's going to be a really good week, honestly. I mean, despite the oppositions and despite the fact that, maybe long-term career goals are just not something that you can focus on today, right now. That's okay. It's not the worst thing in the world, but putting that aside for now doesn't mean that you can't pick it back up again, say in January or so. I have the Fool. I have the Fool. Now, if you see, hopefully I am actually showing you this in a way that you can see it. No, not at all. Okay. If you see here, he's dangerously close to the edge. He's just like do 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 do, and he's not paying any attention, and he's just gonna walk right off a cliff. Okay, so this is why the foolish is, or the fool is foolish, because he's just not paying attention to what's going on around him, and he thinks that he's indispensable, or he's completely free from responsibility, or having to take responsibility, which of course is not true. So, with that being said, I wouldn't necessarily say that pulling the fool means that you're going to do something stupid this week. But I will say that a lot of times when I pull the fool, especially in readings like this, you want to make sure you don't put yourself in a position to feel foolish. For instance, um, trusting somebody that you know you shouldn't trust. Somebody saying they're going to do something for you, and then of course they don't, knowing that they weren't going to, and you're just like, ugh, well, I'm such an idiot because I knew that that was going to happen. It's things like that. I don't see you as doing anything stupid. It's more like making sure that you're aware, and that your faith in people, whether it's put in the wrong place or not, doesn't put you in that position of feeling foolish, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Jeannette. So we don't have really any planets in Gemini, so to speak, but because Uranus is on the cusp of Gemini at 29 degrees in Taurus, we're still feeling the effects of that. And with that being said, in the introduction, I went on and on about how favorable Mercury really is in terms of its interaction with a lot of the planets around it. And that is true for pretty much every planet except for Uranus. Uranus is in direct opposition with Mercury as it's retrograde, as well as Venus and the Sun, all of which are pointing towards long-term career goals. So while Uranus is sitting very firmly focusing on the home, I do believe. Let me just take a look here. Focusing on the mind and how the mind works. Uranus is a very rebellious sort of influence. And when it's retrograde, it kind of takes that rebellion away a little bit, almost to the point where it's like in your mind, you're thinking, what's the point of fighting? What's the point of going on? Nothing works the way that it's supposed to. It just sort of brings this defeatist attitude. And it's that defeatist attitude, pardon me, that's really going to take away from your ability to focus on any of your long-term goals right now. This could also be because with Mercury being retrograde up until Friday, and the holiday, of course, nothing ever goes the way that it's supposed to go on the holiday. It never happens. Okay. There's always somebody that shows up late, somebody that says they're going to bring something and they don't, blah, blah, blah. There's always something, right? And so I feel like what's really happening here is less that you're defeated and you don't feel like you can do it, but more like it feels like every time you try and sit down and focus on something, you get interrupted. And that's just going to be heightened this week because it's the holidays. So let's do ourselves a favor here and not spend any time this week focusing on long-term goals. You've got already too much going on. Whether you're working or not working, the holiday is a big deal. I know that you're probably cooking, or it's probably being hosted at your house. You just moved back there. So you've already got a lot of stuff on your plate as it is. Let's go ahead and table what we're doing for the rest of our life just for this week, just to make it a little bit easier on yourself. Uranus is in a grand sextile with Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. The moon actually moves into a conjunction with Saturn and Neptune at the very end of the week. So it kind of sort of Adds its magic to all of that a little bit. Saturn and Neptune focused on self, Jupiter focused on your day-to-day schedule. So what we're looking at here is by eliminating the stress of trying to figure out certain things that are taking place in the future, it makes it easier for you to focus on what you need to take care of right now. Uranus is also in a grand sextile with Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. And Pluto is all about change and transformation. It's your source of power. And it's bringing up triggers right now. But eliminating those triggers does make you feel more powerful. So being able to focus on just fixing what you need to fix this week really is helpful because if you do this work now, it makes it easier for you to focus on those long-term plans, say starting next week when we don't have the holiday getting in your way. Although we do have another one just pretty much right after it, right? So basically, it's an irritation, not a complication. Yes, you're going to have miscommunications, especially around the holiday. Yes, that's going to come up. And what's kind of interesting is that Uranus, or I'm sorry, not Uranus, but Mercury's retrograde is ending like Thursday night, Friday morning. So it's going to go right through the holiday pretty much. And then once the holiday is over, it's like, oh, okay, the Mercury's like, okay, I can relax now also, even. It's kind of interesting timing, but I feel like you can eliminate the stress as much as you can by just being picky and choosy about what you're focusing on. What is your responsibility and not necessarily taking on everybody else's responsibilities in the process because that makes things more difficult for sure. I am pulling the Three of Cups, and the Three of Cups is celebration. What I love about this card is she also to me represents the Trinity, which is the witch's Trinity, which is the maid, the mother, and the crone. But also three is ultimate balance. Okay. Yes, they always say that two because the two sides have to be balanced out in the scale, but people are always forgetting the part in the middle that has to balance out the two sides. So to me, three is ultimate balance. The Three of Cups in this position is an emotional reason to celebrate. It's a wedding, it's just people being together, it's family time. It's basically it's a great day and a great holiday, and all of the work will be worth it. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Dimitra, we still have Jupiter. And Jupiter is still retrograde, of course, and Jupiter is still focused on your day-to-day schedule. So very interesting things happening since we talked about it the other day. Jupiter all about growing and expanding, but not when it's retrograde. It's actually sort of instead of adding more to your plate, we're sort of taking things off. Um, we're making more time and more room in your schedule, which is definitely a good thing, right? And it is in a grand trine with that Mercury retrograde, as well as Venus and the Sun, all of which are focused on long-term goals, in some cases, long-term career goals with the addition of the Sun there. Also in a grand trine with Saturn and Jupiter, not Jupiter. Neptune. And at the very end of the week, the moon is going to be in a conjunction with those two planets. So the moon is also going to be part of this grand trine right at the end of the week. And Jupiter's in a grand sextile with these three planets, as well as we're bringing the addition of Uranus, which is also retrograde, into the mix. Now, interesting thing. Let's talk about the grand sextile here for a minute. Uranus is retrograde. Now, Uranus is very rebellious. It's Aquarius's planet. So we're not doing things the same way that everybody else does. We're going to do it completely the opposite, even if it's wrong. Okay? Because God forbid that we are looking like we're following a crowd. Okay? This is Uranus is just this very sort of eccentric, um we're gonna not just out of the box, we're gonna blow up the box, okay? Because we don't like a box, we want an octagon now. It's just sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but when in retrograde it makes perfect sense, and especially because Uranus is focused on the mind, okay? So we're not necessarily looking at things in the same way that we used to. For instance, let's use your mother's spirituality here, okay? You know, all the things that you would rebel against because this is what you have dealt with her for years. You're gifting yourself the ability to look at those things in a different way, and not necessarily have them be a trigger right off the bat, if that makes sense. Also, long-term goals. With Jupiter being in a grand trine with Mercury, which is focused on long-term goals, you opening up that time does give you more time to focus on your long-term goals. The issue and the one big thing that's going to be holding you back this week, I really feel, is Jupiter's opposition with Pluto. And today, that opposition includes the moon because, not today, tomorrow, because the moon moves into conjunction with Pluto. Now, again, Pluto is focused on triggers, and the moon is bringing those triggers up and making sure that they're very emotional triggers. So I feel like at the beginning of the week, and granted, this is a holiday week, so a lot of times people who have traumatic experiences with family or just difficult relationships with family really struggle during the holidays because either we're struggling with trying to find a way to not being around the family. Everybody talking about being around their family sort of brings up the fact that our families suck, okay? You know, it's things like that that heighten things and make it more difficult. And when we're faced with it and we emotionally react to it, each time we emotionally react to it, it becomes bigger. And every time it becomes bigger, it becomes more difficult to put down, and it becomes a bigger barrier and more stubbornness towards not letting these things go and just keeping them. So our power is not in our triggers. Our power is in the ability to release said triggers, right? And it doesn't mean that once you go, okay, I don't care that my mom's a lunatic anymore, that all of the sudden everything just magically changes. But what it does do is it gives you permission to choose, am I going to hold on to this today, or am I just going to put it down and walk away from it? That choice is what it's all about. Okay. It's not about whether we lose this problem or not. It's always about the choice. And some days it's harder to make that choice, and that's okay. You're taking some time off. I'm not sure if it's gonna be the full 12 weeks that you're looking for. It might be a little bit less, but it is okay to spend a week just kind of sort of getting your shit back together again. I feel like it's really important to do that. And I also feel like the struggle within that has a lot to do with the fact that you're feeling like you're wasting time. And when you're wasting time, what happens? We just sort of don't do anything. And then before you know it, however many weeks you have for FMLA are just going to go by and you didn't really do anything. You definitely want to avoid that. So making sure that you have your goals set, which you're working on, making sure that you give yourself days, time to process, to deal with some of these triggers that are coming up. That's also a very important part of the work as well. We don't want to look at that or refer to that as wasting time. Even if it's a day where you just have to cry all day long and be angry, that's still not a wasted day. That is a productive day. It's a day that is specifically for release of these issues, which is really important. We need to release these issues so that we're not weighed down by them, if that makes sense. Card that I'm pulling for you today is the Emperor in reverse. Now, this is not you, okay? I know that this is not you. We all can be this guy, but this is not you, okay? The Emperor in reverse is a dictator, okay? I love that word because it begins with dick. He's always an arrogant prick, right? He's always the guy that's just like, I'm in charge and screw the rest of you. Because I've just, whatever I say goes. I feel like this card is coming up around you getting your FMLA. Okay. It's like everybody's on board with it, but this one dictator here who's causing some problems. But I also see those problems smoothing out. And I also feel like it's possible that he's coming in after the fact, after the papers have already been signed. So there's not much he can do, but just kind of sort of bully and try to make your life miserable, but there's really not much that he can do. Also, I just want to say too, there is an element of this card coming up around another man around you, whether it's a date where you find out that he's just an arrogant prick and it's just such a difficult date to get through because he's so not what you want to be spending your time with. Or perhaps somewhere within the music groups or whatever, you're going to come across this particular person. I kind of feel like this is definitely one of those people that tends to be very sort of, it's like he wants to scare people into doing what he wants them to do. Okay. And I just feel like I kind of feel like this is interesting. I feel like he's ignoring you. He's victimizing everybody around you, and it's almost like you're like, oh my God, he's just picking through everybody, and I'm next, but he never gets to you. And that's actually kind of a weird thing. It's kind of a weird feeling, because you sort of question why am I upset about this? Why am I upset at the fact that this guy is just completely leaving him alone? It's because he sees you. He sees that he can't get anything from you. And therefore, not only is he going to completely ignore you as if you don't exist, but he may start bad mouthing you around people also. This could have something to do with that guy. You know the guy I'm talking about. The one who was a dick. And while he may not be fighting his battles and he's got women to fight them for him, he may be resurfacing again at some point. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Connie. No planets in Leo this week, which is very, very nice. Nothing to influence anything. May sound a little bit boring, but boring is not a bad thing sometimes either. Focus is on relationships. Ha ha. I say ha ha because, of course, of what we've recently been through here, but also you are going to be seeing Brent this week, possibly your grandson and Desiree. And let's just say when we say the word relationships, that doesn't always mean, that our relationships are perfect. In fact, I don't think anybody has a relationship that is. Um, I'm accused all the time when I complain about my husband being annoying. And everybody's always just like, I don't know why you complain about him because he's so perfect, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, yeah. According to you, that's true, right? But, nobody lives with him but me. I know who he is. And he does annoying things. And I say he was a bad person? No, I just don't like the annoying things. And everybody has that sort of parts of them where they have good parts to them, but they're overly annoying too at the same time. What do I see? I see actually a couple of really good instances this week to enjoy yourself, to enjoy the people that you love. as much as you can. I am a little bit nervous about Kylan only because he's been acting kind of weird, but I feel like you're going to find out why he's been acting weird, and it's not at all what you think or what you have been thinking up until this point. Mm. And that could be a really good thing, actually, because it releases you feeling like you've done something or he's just acting like his father or something along those lines. So I want to say, and I know how difficult this is because, you don't have a lot of examples of things going well, okay? I understand that. But you have two separate incidents this week around the holiday to spend some time with somebody that you love, even if there's difficulties in the relationship. And I feel like there won't be a lot of difficulties there. I feel like that it's actually going to be really good. If there's any difficulties, you know where they're going to come from. And we all know what her name is. And I feel like if anything, when you are able to see, if you do go and see her on Friday and you are able to spend time with Kyla, the one thing that's going to ruin that is his mother, of course, because that's just what she does, all about her, right? And I think that that's annoying. I know it's not a personal affront against you. It's more of of course, this is going to happen, and I can't just spend time with my grandson. I have to deal with her sorry behind. You know what I mean? Card that I'm pulling for you is the world, baby. So here's the deal. I don't see a whole lot of um stuff going on this week either in terms of a lawsuit because I know that that's kind of sort of going on around you as well. The world in this position, you can see she's got the world in the palm of her hand and things are going really well. They're celebrating. She's even naked. Okay. But that's besides the point. She is literally just like celebrating that everything is going to plan, everything is going her way. So, we could, of course, interpret it as everything is going to go your way and everything is going to be fine. At the same time, though, I feel like even if it doesn't, there's something else coming in behind it that's just going to take off. So even if you're going through something difficult and challenging, it's not going to stop you from succeeding. That's how I would interpret that card for you. So have a great holiday. That's what I have for you this week. Moving on to Jenny, no planets in Leo. I mean, right now, Leo and Virgo are just like, yes, we're not involved in any of it right now. Just kind of sitting on the sidelines watching everything else happening around them, which is not a bad thing. And Leo's focus is on relationships this week, which of course is a good week for that. I mean, it's the holiday, you've got your family getting together, all of that stuff. That's good and bad, of course, in both measures, depending on whether, what kind of relationships you have and who you're choosing to spend your time with. I'm kind of feeling like you're smart and choosing to spend your time with people that do not piss you off. So that's good. And I just do feel that it's going to be a really good day. Stressful a little bit. Yeah, I'm sure. But, for the most part, really fun day, which is good. I see the whole family coming together, which is nice also. And I do want to say also, I feel like at the end of the week, it's what's really important is it's not just the family time and it's not just the holiday, but you got 3 days afterwards to decompress. And that decompression time is really, really important. I think the best thing about Thanksgiving is that we have 4 days off and the actual holiday is right in the beginning. So we can just knock that out and take care of it and then just really decompress for the next 3 days. I think that's what makes it the best holiday because we have all that time, right? So I am seeing that you are utilizing there's two things. I feel like you have some plans for that time. But I also feel like these plans are not like set in stone, you know. You can be a little bit flexible. Maybe get half of the stuff on your list done, but not all of it, if that makes sense. Because I feel like it's really important to have a spa day in there somewhere, or something that just helps you to relax, take some time. You know, you could get all your stuff done on Friday. That gives you the whole weekend to relax, et cetera, et cetera. Really important to get that time in there because yes, I know it's your education time, but you've got other things that you're focused on and worrying about as well. And that kind of sort of uh how do I want to put it? Infiltrates your normal schedule, I guess. So a good decompression time, really important. Definitely take some time this weekend if you can. And you don't have to go anywhere to do it. In fact, sometimes not going anywhere makes it a lot easier. Then again, sometimes being at home makes it more difficult. Get the Six of Cups in reverse for you. Normally, the Six of Cups is all about children taking some sort of a prominent role, but in this position, living in the past, leave behind past loves and experiences and move towards the future. So we definitely don't want to be wallowing in the past. I don't necessarily see that happening. I kind of feel like, well, let me put it this way. It almost seems ridiculous to say this to you, okay? Economically, things were so much easier at one time. And I think that that's where this living in the past is coming from. If it was, if we were 15 years ago, it would be more, it wouldn't be so difficult, blah, blah, blah. You know, as well as anybody knows that that's obviously not going to be helpful. And, 15 years ago, we were probably thinking the same thing about 15 years previous to that. So this is kind of not to Oh my goodness. It's not to say that I hope this has been recording all this time. It's not to say that it's that you live there, but I feel like when things get overly frustrating, maybe you do tend to dabble in there a little bit here and there and just put a time limit on that, okay? So that is what I have for you. I'm going to pause this for just a minute. Okay, so I'm hoping that I'm not having any kind of recording issues here because it just all of a sudden popped up like it was recording, but it should have been recording before. So hopefully it was. Moving on to Matalyn. No planets in Virgo. In fact, this week Virgo is pretty much in between focuses as well. Not much to focus on. Our focus is going to move into relationships here pretty soon, but it's not quite there yet. We're going to be in between focuses, I think, probably for a couple of weeks, which is a really good thing. What that means is that you don't have the universe sort of pushing you to focus on something. You get to choose. What do you want to focus on? And right now is the perfect time for that, for you especially. Things are different. I hear you're going back to school. I used to talk to your mom last week, sort of. And she talked, I listened. And which I think is awesome that you're doing that. Go you. And things are very different now. You're not in a relationship anymore that is really scary, but it's also really exciting because you're not focusing your energy on any other person. You're focusing your energy on you. That's what you need to be doing right now. Also, it's the beginning of the year. So, now that we're in the beginning of the year, it's a great time to be focused on you and what you want to get accomplished, which is really good. So, being in between focuses for the last couple of weeks of November not a bad thing, especially during the Mercury retrograde, which does end at the end of this week. Now, that being said, um, with not having anything specific to focus on, that also gives the universe the ability to just throw whatever it wants at you, you know? And so, of course, you're going to have a lot of family around this week. I mean, it is the holiday after all. And that happens. So you're going to have a lot of family around. That can be good and it can be bad. It just depends, of course, on the family. I know you got a lot of cousins, so that's awesome. But also, and you have a lot of family that's really cool. You really do. But I also feel that there's always going to be those couple of people that just like kind of sort of eye roll, insert eye roll here. And I know your concerns too about your mom. Okay. Now let me just say this. Okay. Let me just say this. I'm your aunt and I love you. Okay. Yes, I love your mom too, but let me just say this because I'm your aunt and I love you. Okay. Whatever you want your mom to do, understand that there's things that she wants you to do too. There's things that she needs you to do too. And what I keep hearing over and over again, and I'm just going to share this with you, is that she needs help. Now, I sent Daniel up there in the hopes that he would do that. And but he's not her kid. Okay. You are. And you're the only kid that she ever had. All right. And it's even amazing that you're there because your mom really didn't want kids. All right. Neither one of us did. But she did. She had you. And she's never, ever, ever not been happy to have you. Okay. That being said, she's under a tremendous amount of pressure. Cut her some slack. If, and I'm not saying that you are, but if you are punishing her because she's doing something that you don't want her to do, let me just say that she's vindictive enough, being a Sagittarius, to punish you for not doing what she needs you to do also. Okay. You guys have to work together. This is really important. Okay. And I'm not criticizing you and I'm not getting on your ass. Okay. I'm simply stating that when it comes to relationships with anybody, it has to be two-sided. And with parents in particular, children tend to be very one-sided. They tend to be very self-centered because the parents have always taken care of everything until they become adults. Then the parents should not be responsible for them anymore. Okay. Doesn't always work out that way. And I'm only saying this, I'm not saying this because your mom is complaining about you. I'm saying this because I'm trying to help you and I'm trying to help you both. Okay. The plain and simple fact of the matter is that every single family gets into their things where I'm stubborn about this, I refuse to do that. I'm stubborn about this, I refuse to do this. Well, I'm stubborn about this and I refuse to do that. And I have seen your parents get into this same argument a million times. Now that you're an adult, you're all of a sudden into this argument. You don't have to choose to be in the middle of this argument. Okay. You can choose a different path. But choosing a different path doesn't mean necessarily that you completely get out of the situation. It does mean, however, that you take on the responsibilities that you need to take on for yourselves. That's all I'm saying. Okay. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in a few weeks. The Four of Cups is the card that I have pulled for you today. And the Four of Cups in this position indicates disappointment and unrecognized opportunity. Not exactly thrilling, okay? Not exactly thrilling. But you know what? Disappointment is temporary. Unrecognized opportunity, also temporary. It's a lesson to keep your eyes peeled and to make sure that you're not either spending so much time ignoring what's going on around you or turning down something that maybe you should have not turned down, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you. Pardon me. Moving on to Linda. We have nothing going on in Virgo. So much nothing going on in Virgo that Virgo doesn't even have anything to focus on right now. It's in between focuses. I think this is brilliant for this week in particular because it's the holiday. It just gives you a chance. Everything just kind of goes away and it gives you a chance to focus on your family, to focus on the holiday, to focus on, everybody being together, which I think is amazing. And I think also that some of these don't have anything to focus on right now. Some things maybe you were supposed to be focusing on, but either they're not ready yet or you're still waiting on people. And it's nice, actually. I think that there's the delays, which were probably caused by Mercury being in retrograde, are actually benefiting you this week, which is brilliant. So I don't see a whole lot of chaos happening this week. I actually feel it's going to be a very nice holiday with everybody sort of getting together. I don't see a great big giant family fight in the middle of it or anything like that. I also see a lot more time for you to be able to spend on the people around you and just enjoying everybody around you, which is a big deal. I think that this is probably more of a thing than it ever has been, if that makes any sense at all. And what I mean by that is everything's always been rushed before. Now you feel that you could just take your time and actually enjoy it. It's sort of out of your comfort zone, a little bit, if that makes sense, but in a very good way, I think. It's a very, very good way. That being said, not having a focus right now, it's good and it's not good. I mean, for somebody who's very structured like you are, it's not great. But I think that that's the lesson there, isn't it? Is to be able to relax and actually enjoy some time. So I feel the holiday's going to be great. But what in the hell are you supposed to do with 3 days after? That's the real question. Well, obviously, I know you don't have plans on Sunday because we're meeting on Sunday. But in the beginning of the week, is a good time for you to, because you have to have that structure, to put some structure into those days, right? Come up with some plans for yourself, something that you don't get to do very often, maybe to kind of help get through those days, but also give yourself that time to decompress and relax. Because I really feel that once we get towards the end of next month, things are going to start changing for you, like drastically. In what way, I cannot say yet, but it's coming. You definitely want to embrace this time now so that you can enjoy it later. I have the Ace of Cups in reverse for this week. Now, aces are new beginnings. Definitely not a good time to start anything right now. The Ace of Cups in this position indicates emotions are ruling rushing headlong into a new situation, and therefore that causes delays. Again, we're in the Mercury retrograde, and we're going to be in a shadow period next week. So, trying to push through is just going to cause more delays. Remember, the delays are there for a reason. So we want to make sure, of course, that we are enjoying the delays rather than fighting against them, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you. I'm going to take a little break. Be right back. Okay. Moving on to Regina. We have that rascally Mercury in Scorpio officially now moved into Scorpio last week. Although, honestly, I think, even though, I mean, it does directly affect you, I know. I get that. And being in Scorpio, but it's definitely has changed a little bit. From the first week being in Sagittarius, where it's all kind of chaotic and twitchy, and stuff like that. Scorpio is a little bit less chaotic and twitchy, I guess. Um, Focusing on long-term goals. Everything is focused on long-term goals in terms of the sun, which is officially not in Scorpio anymore. It has moved into Sagittarius. And Venus. Venus is still in Scorpio, pretty much in conjunction with Mercury. So those two really working together. Now, Mercury in retrograde, yes, it causes complications. My phone's been a jerk for like days now. And when I say that, it's like stupid stuff like somebody calls me and I answer it, but it just doesn't seem to quite be working, And that's been going on for like days. It's really, really annoying. But in any case, all those weird little things aside, Mercury in retrograde, focusing on your long-term goals, not necessarily a bad thing. Think about it. You don't want to divulge all of your plans. So Mercury's all about holding back communication rather than over communicating, which is what it normally is in direct. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, Mercury and Venus are in opposition with Uranus. That's the big problem, I guess, so to speak, because Uranus is retrograde. It's focused on how you think about things. It kind of sort of feels like you can't change the way you think about things. So when you're looking at your long-term goals, if you've always looked at things pessimistically, it feels like you're stuck in that pessimistic nightmare still, which can be very frustrating. However, that's just frustrating. Mercury is in a grand trine with Jupiter, which is focused on your day-to-day duties, which is also retrograde. So instead of adding more to your plate, it's actually taking things off, which is not a bad thing, as well as Saturn and Neptune, which are focused on self. And Saturn is going direct. It has been retrograde. It's going direct about Thursday. So it's, not so much focused on taking on responsibilities that don't belong to you. It's about taking responsibility for what you need to take responsibility for and not necessarily using the responsibilities of others as an excuse as to why you can't do that, if that makes sense. Neptune is still retrograde, but Neptune being retrograde just means that your intuition is very much heightened. And when it's focused on self, it means it's your intuition, not necessarily the intuition of others that's coming through. So, yes, we tend to question that a lot, but I feel like you've gotten a lot of intuitive messages lately, and it definitely behooves you to pay attention to that and to follow that guidance as much as possible because it is going to steer you in the direction that you want to be steered in. Also, um, Mercury, Venus are also in a grand sextile with Saturn and Neptune and Pluto. Now, Pluto is in a very interesting place right now. Pluto's all about your source of power, it's your ability to change, it's going direct, and it's focused on triggers. Makes no sense at all until you realize that it's overcoming those triggers and taking the power away from those triggers that really helps you move forward. So, I'm not surprised that that interview didn't go great. Okay. I think that that interview was you making the choice to say, okay, there's something out there other than what I'm doing right now. It's giving you, it's giving you the opportunity to kind of dust yourself off. And honestly, I think when you're starting the interview process, the first interview going terribly badly is actually a really good thing because it's the test interview. So it's good. You were interviewing for like the position that you want, You're just literally going to get the how do I want to say this? Get yourself back into the possibilities of doing interviews. I don't know if they have anything out there. Oh, sorry, where you are like this. I did a lot of jobs just as a temp to hire position as well. So I would, sign up with a temp agency, do all the testing, all that stuff, and then they would just send me to jobs, and I'd work there for a while. Some of them stuck, some of them were just a couple of weeks or whatever. And so that was good if it was a job that I really didn't like. It wasn't great if it was a job that I would love to stay at, but whatever. But a lot of those jobs became temp to hire jobs. So I wound up sticking around there and eventually getting hired on by the company as well. So, that's also an option, possibly if they have something like that out there where you're at, which I'm sure they do. So there's definitely always possibilities there. And I think that Mercury being in retrograde, it's kind of in your favor, because when Mercury is in retrograde, things do tend to slow down a little bit sometimes. And, especially with it being in a fixed sign like Scorpio, we tend to be kind of slow. Not like snails necessarily, but it takes us a while to get going. And I think that this is going to take you a while to get going, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It allows you to gradually navigate that change rather than being, hurled into it or thrown into it, if that makes sense. So, not necessarily a bad thing. I think that if we can navigate change slowly, especially for fixed signs, that's definitely the best way to go, if that makes sense. I've got the Eight of Pentacles in reverse. And the Eight of Pentacles in reverse, that's really interesting here. Eight of Pentacles in reverse. Loss of interest in work. Need to find new interests or occupations. Well, duh. So basically, that's where we're at right now. Not surprising at all. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa. I missed your birthday last week, so happy birthday. I hope it was a really good one. And Mercury is officially in Scorpio. Moved into Scorpio last week, still in retrograde. Retrograde is over at the end of this week, late Thursday, beginning of Friday. The retrograde is over. We do have a bit of a shadow period there. And then Oh, I'm so sorry. And then we're done with Mercury being in retrograde. Not necessarily a bad thing at all. Actually, it moving into Scorpio felt like it just made it so much easier to handle. In Sagittarius, it's just kind of like loud and aggressive and in your face, whereas Scorpio tends to be a little bit quieter, more calculating, sometimes sneaky. The things sneak up on you. Yes, there's been, little issues like my phone has just been kind of a jerk the past week or so, not wanting to work for absolutely no reason at all. But other than that, I've definitely seen some good points and some bad points, and don't feel like I'm crawling through it quite so much as, say, retrogrades in the past this year have been. They've been pretty chaotic and crazy for sure. So, with that being said, this week, the biggest challenge is that Mercury and Venus, while they are in conjunction with each other, focusing on your long-term goals, in opposition with Uranus makes it a bit of a challenge, especially around Thursday when the moon moves amplified this into a T square. So it amplifies this challenge, makes it a little bit bigger temporarily for about a day or so. Oddly enough, on the holiday, that just makes everything worse, right? Especially because the moon's focus is on self. So it's bringing up your own emotions around this time, which is not surprising. Being that it's a holiday, this is the time where we really seem to notice the people that aren't there at the table on these days, and it makes the holiday that much more difficult to get through, right? Because we're flooded with memories of people who are not there. And Uranus being focused on the mind and being retrograde really makes it feel like you can't seem to change the way you're thinking about this, even maybe at times before you've been able to kind of twerk the way that you think about it, so it's not quite so devastating, but this time it's just not working for you. It's become very difficult. I think that we should put this into perspective a little bit, okay? The thing is about mediumship that I have learned is that the holidays are always the most difficult, especially when you're missing people who are always there at those particular holidays. Like I start to miss my husband's grandparents so much more. Soon as fall hits and that Christmas comes in the air, I miss his grandmother like crazy. They were my grandparents for 20 some odd years. So I was very attached to them as if I was their own kid, okay? And they were my own grandparents. And so since 2016, wow, I can't believe it's almost been 10 years. When she passed away, he passed away 4 years before she did. It has just been sort of this lost wandering around for me around Thanksgiving Day, where I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And, I tend to think about her a lot more. I tend to smell her more around that time because the holiday itself was so synonymous with her. And at the same time, in the beginning, the first several Thanksgivings, it's like almost like I refused to participate. I was just hoping that if I didn't see any of the turkey or anything like that, that I wouldn't feel it, which by the way didn't happen. Okay. Did not happen. Then I went the opposite direction and tried to overdo it so that maybe in all of that time I would just be so busy that I wasn't thinking about her. That didn't happen either. But what I did have last year was this incredible gift. Was it last year? I think it was last year. Or maybe it could have been the year before. I had this incredible gift. I was just missing her so much on the days leading up to Thanksgiving, and it was very quiet around that time because the studio's not very busy and such. Oh, so here I am, just missing her like crazy. I could not miss her. And my brother was in town and he's like, come, I'm gonna come pick you up and we're gonna go to my friend's house and spend Thanksgiving with her family. And I was like, I'm just not into it. Okay. Not into it this year at all. I just, kind of just want to get under a blanket and hide and pretend that Thanksgiving isn't happening. I'm really, really struggling this year with this holiday. And he was like, but I'm never here and you got to come hang out with me. And he convinced me to go. And I walked into the house of I knew his friends, not her family. I walked into her house and sitting at the counter on a stool was her mother, this woman who looked exactly like my husband's grandmother. She had the facial expressions. When she laughed, her eyes disappeared, like that Dave's grandmother did. She was just, it was as if this woman came to visit me that day. And it was such a tremendous gift to be able to spend it with her. I felt guilty because nobody else in the family was there. But and I went up to this woman and I said to her, I said, this is going to sound so weird, but please let me just sit and hold your hand for a minute. And she was like, okay, no problem. And I did. And it felt like her hand. I mean, it was one of those amazing experiences where I felt like this woman literally came from the dead and was there with me. And those instances happen in so many different ways. So I feel like when you're open to that, you'll see the visitations and how they sort of kind of come to you. I've had her come to me a million different ways, including feeling like somebody's hand is in mine. But this was just like, wow, it's literally like I got a second chance all of a sudden. So they want to be with you just as much as you want to be with them. And that a lot of the time is the reason why they are so foremost on your mind because they're there. They're at the table. They're waiting with the rest of the family. They're not missing out on this. Um, they're not missing out on this holiday, but we can feel that. And our interpretation of that is that we miss them more because they're not here. And of course, we do, right? So it can be a little bit tricky, okay? But guaranteed, I feel that those people who are not there to sup with you for the holiday are there to sup with you for the holiday. Um, Outside of that opposition and those things creating that little bit of a challenge and a little bit of a difficulty, Mercury is opening things up drastically for you. With Mercury's focus on long-term goals, and granted, the week of the holiday is not a great time to focus on that, but it is in a grand trine with Jupiter, which is retrograde and focused on your day-to-day schedule, opening up time for you to focus on what you want your near future to look like. Also in a grand trine with Saturn and Neptune, which are focused on you. So Saturn is all about responsibility going direct at the end of this week. And so it's really giving you the opportunity to get rid of the responsibilities that don't belong to you, any guilt that you have, any of that stuff that's just holding you back. It's time to eliminate that and take on the responsibility of navigating your life, navigating your own success. And Neptune is there to lend that beautiful intuition that she has. She's still retrograde, which only heightens that intuition and makes it more prominent and more powerful. So, with that being said, also, Mercury and Venus are in a grand sextile with yet again Saturn and Neptune, but also Pluto. Pluto's all about change and transformation, helping you change and transform how your triggers and your emotional past is affecting you, is playing a part in your current reality. So it's helping sort of eliminate all that. Bottom line is there's a lot of magic happening this week, and with magic comes change, comes success, comes growth, comes all kinds of wonderful things. We just have to get out of the way and allow those things to happen. Now, the card that I'm pulling for you today is the Queen of Cups in reverse. Queen of Cups, she's an emotional leader. She definitely understands how people feel. She takes that into consideration. When she is reversed, it indicates emotions are ruling head, need to gain clear perspective, need to stop living according to other people's desires, and stop allowing others to take advantage. And I feel like that last line right there, that stop allowing others to take advantage, there may be some that are using your grief state as a reason to take advantage because you're not 100% paying attention. So that is your reminder to make sure that you are paying attention so that you can eliminate that from being a problem. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Jillian. It is Thanksgiving again. And Mercury is still retrograde all the way through till the end of the week, goes direct on Friday. Next week will be a shadow period, and then we're done with Mercury retrogrades for 2025. And Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio. So we started off in Sagittarius a couple of weeks ago. It moved into Scorpio last week. To be honest, it feels like it's sort of simmered down a little bit. In Sagittarius, it's like chaotic and wacky and in your face. Scorpio is fixed. It's a little bit calmer, okay? A little bit calmer. Still a little bit scary, but it's definitely a little bit calmer. And its focus is on long-term goals. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. Because yes, it may be causing delays in certain things that you want to do right now. Even things that might pertain to those long-term goals. But at the same time, I really feel that Mercury being retrograde in Scorpio right now and in conjunction with Venus is instead of you trying to rush through your goals to get to these long-term goals, to get to the end, it's slowing things down. which is good. You want to slow down and smell the flowers every now and then. It's about the experience and not necessarily how you get there, right? Now, the big challenge this week is Mercury and Venus being in opposition with Uranus. And at the end of the week, the moon moving into a square with all of those planets. So it's amplifying this challenge. And the moon's focus is on self. And of course, it's Thanksgiving Day when all of this is happening. What happens on holidays when we've lost people that we love? Those are the days that we think about them the most, especially Thanksgiving. Your dad loved to cook, right? So much so that I fought with him so much about which one of us was the better cook, okay? Hopefully he's not listening. It probably was him. Only because he put more time and effort into it, okay? But I'm not bad myself. All right? I will just say that. But he enjoyed it. And he put more time and effort into it. And creating food was a big deal to him. Much more of a big deal to you or to me or even your grandmother. So I can see where these holidays, of course, are the times when he is closest to you because he is missing you on those days too. He's missing making that food and seeing you guys enjoy it and, just being a part of the whole thing. And I feel like the holidays, our family in spirit comes much, much, much closer, but that's interpreted by us missing them and not realizing that part of that missing them feeling is we're connecting with them because they're so right there, like an octopus on our faces, wanting us to see that they're sitting at the table with us. So it can be a bit overwhelming for sure. However, you don't want that overwhelmingness, and he doesn't want that overwhelmingness to get in the way of what you're trying to do, what you're planning to do. So take the time, honor him by spending some time thinking about him, but also be open to letting him help you succeed. I think you've had some ideas pop in your head that you haven't been thinking of before. They just sort of pop there, and you're just like, well, I'm not sure if I can do that. That's him. That's him trying to guide you. That's him saying, no, this is what we can do. So, yes, it's sort of uncomfortable to listen to somebody who's just not there, but think about it this way. It's also uncomfortable to be him, okay? Trying like heck to get your attention and you're just not getting it, right? He knows how smart you are. He knows that you can hear him, that you know what he's saying. So, who does it hurt? Who does it hurt? Let him guide you. He can see farther than you can. And I know that you're getting the messages. I know you are. He's saying that you are getting the messages. You just have to follow them. That's all. Now, aside from that one challenge there, everything else is lining up beautifully because Mercury and Venus are in a grand trine with Jupiter. Jupiter's also retrograde. Instead of adding more to your plate on your day-to-day schedule, it's taking things away, giving you more time to be creative, while it's also lining up with Saturn and Neptune. Now, both of which are focused on self. Saturn is all about making sure that you take care of your responsibilities and leave everybody else's. And of course, Neptune is there with that intuition. Also, both of these planets in a grand sextile with Mercury, Venus, and Pluto. Pluto's your source of power. It's all about change and transformation. It's focused on your emotional past and your triggers. And yes, you can't change that, but you can change how it owns you, right? It can change how much those things actually have an effect on whether or not you are making the choices to be successful or not. So that's actually a good thing. Pluto is working towards busting all that up so that it gives you kind of a clear slate, if that makes sense. Or at least it's sort of like you have a path that you have to walk on, and you're looking at it, and it's covered in vines, and you really can't see the ground, and it's kind of scary and dark. Well, Pluto just sort of comes in and cleans all that up for you, gives you a nice clean, a nice clean path to walk on. So it makes it a little bit easier to see. Card that I'm pulling for you today is the Eight of Swords. And the Eight of Swords in this position. Eight of Swords in this position indicates trouble in health, wealth, and emotional happiness, a tendency to make matters worse than they are. That's blowing up the little stuff because we're so full of the bitter stuff, if that makes sense. So you want to be aware of that. You want to try to avoid that as much as you can. I know some days are more difficult than others, but again, healing is not about finding yourself living a life where it seems like you never had trauma. Healing is living a life and being successful despite that trauma. Okay. Again, we've talked about Johnny Depp a lot, and he's done just that. And if he can do it, then we can do it, right? So that's what I have for you, darling. Moving on to Amber. Mercury in Scorpio now, still retrograde until about late Thursday, early Friday, and then he goes direct. We'll have a shadow period next week, and then we are done with Mercury being in retrograde for the rest of the year, which I am okay with. Okay. I am okay with. I think it being in Scorpio has sort of made it a little bit easier for us to tolerate it. In Sagittarius, it's kind of crazy and whacked out and in your face. Scorpio's a little bit more subdued, I guess. Maybe because it's sneakier, it makes it easier, and those little things sneak up on you rather than being like chaotic and wow in your face, kind of thing. But for the most part, I have definitely felt a shift between it being a Sagittarius retrograde and it being a Scorpio retrograde. Now, granted, I'm not a Scorpio, but it's lining up in such beautiful ways with so many planets that actually it's really working in our favor. And I say our favor because Pluto, which is in Aquarius, is one of those planets that it's lining up favorably with right now. But before we get to that, let's talk about the difficult stuff, the challenges, of course, which are Mercury and Venus's opposition with Uranus, which is in Taurus, the opposite sign of Scorpio. Now, Uranus is focused on the mind and how the mind works, and being retrograde really feels like it's hard to change those negative mindsets that are just kind of sort of stuck in there. We all know how that is, right? And with Mercury and Venus being focused on long-term goals, it's hard to fathom that we're going to be successful. And we always go through these times where our minds just work against us in that realm. So what tends to happen is we just give up on our dreams. And this is going to be amplified on Thursday. Of course, the holiday, when the moon moves into a square with all of these planets, amplifying this challenge, right? And the moon's focus is on self, so it means you're the one that's being emotional, but it's the holiday. We all tend to be a little bit more on edge and emotional during the holidays, especially when we don't have those quote unquote stable family units that everybody else seems to have. Um, Everybody else doesn't have them, by the way, but we do tend to see more people with those stable environments around the holidays, I think, than we do any other time, right? I think the growth, well, I don't think this, I know growth doesn't happen in a stable environment. Growth doesn't happen when everything is going great. Growth happens in trauma. Growth happens when things are just falling apart. And I remember watching this TV show, a historical TV show about Catherine of Aragon, where she said, She said something along the lines, she was a very Catholic woman, okay? And she had said that she appreciated more the difficult times in her life because when things were happy, you don't see the blessings that God gives you. You don't see, you don't pay attention to spiritual things. But when you're going through something terrible, you do see spiritual things more. And that's the truth. Regardless of what religion you believe in, you are more aware of spirituality when you're struggling than you are when you're not. And this craziness where people are just like, when are things going to calm down and not be so difficult? I've lived this life for 48 years. Things were never at a point where it wasn't difficult. Okay. I think, I can look back on different parts of my life and go, oh, it was such an idyllic time. I'm completely forgetting all the struggles of that time and simply focusing on what was quote unquote idyllic. Okay. So we just have to look at it for what it is and we have to keep fighting forward, which Mercury in a grand trine with Jupiter, which is retrograde, focused on our day-to-day schedule, is taking things off our plate instead of putting more onto it. Also in that grand trine with Saturn, which is going direct this week, and Neptune, which is all about intuition and utilizing that intuition, and it's all focused on you. It's your intuition. It's literally like embrace that intuition because and the intuition will help keep things from being piled onto your plate and put you navigate you to the things that should go on your plate because they're meant to be on your plate, not just I have a bunch of stuff on my plate. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, right? um Mercury and Venus also in a grand sextile with, again, Saturn and Neptune, but also Pluto. Now, Pluto is your source of power. It's all about change and transformation. It's about taking that power and it's focused on triggers. And this is kind of weird, but it's not at the same time because it's showing you that your triggers can zap your power or make you powerful. Think about it, okay? I did not grow up with an idyllic childhood, but I feel that makes me more powerful. It connects me with people who have had the same experiences as I have. It has given me more opportunity to develop my spirituality because I have a lot to go through in order to do it. I feel that my triggers and my emotional past have given me that power, not necessarily zap that power. Now, that being said, there are times where I do feel it has zapped my power, and there are times when my head goes to if only, if only, if only. Then I realize if I had been spoiled rotten, which is, of course, ideally what I wanted, loved, petted, and spoiled rotten, I probably would be a completely different person. Maybe even somebody I didn't like. So maybe that trauma is actually what makes me who I am. Because in that trauma, I've learned to choose to be a loving person, a kind person. Yes, sometimes an angry person. But because of the fact that I know what that pain feels like, I choose not to spread that to other people. And thus, that's how I've learned and grown from the trauma, if that makes sense. It does give me power in some way. Five of Cups is the card that I have pulled for you today. And the Five of Cups in this position indicates hope for the future, learn valuable lessons from past experiences. That last line right there is very significant. If you don't learn from past experiences, you're doomed to repeat them. So when we learn from them, we're growing. When we're not, we're just stuck, right? And we don't want to be stuck. And I know that you don't want to be stuck. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Kailin. Lots of stuff going on in Scorpio, including Mercury being retrograde in Scorpio currently right now, moved into Scorpio last week, which I don't think is actually necessarily a bad thing. I mean, right now, Scorpio is in a grand, or I'm sorry, Mercury and Venus are in conjunction with each other in Scorpio, both of which are in a grand trine with three other planets, in a grand sextile with three other planets. Basically, most of the planets interacting with Scorpio in very positive ways, all working to support you and your long-term goals, specifically your creative long-term goals, which is a beautiful thing. Of course, it's not without its challenges, the biggest one being that both planets, Mercury and Venus, are in opposition with Uranus. And when the moon moves into a square with all three planets on the holiday, of course, Thursday, and the moon's focus is on self, making you a bit emotional, which makes this challenge a lot more difficult. Now, first of all, the holidays can be the most emotional time in our lives. That is true. Okay. There's various different reasons for that. But I also feel like this for you specifically, there's something specific about what's going on. It's like you're counting on somebody and they don't come through, or you feel like you're counting on multiple people and they're just not coming through. And it feels like the emotion here for that I'm getting from you is more of a frustration and an irritation, and I am sick and tired of having to pick up everybody's slack and clean up everybody's freaking messes all the time, right? And today is the day where I stand up and say, I'm not cleaning up your messes anymore. Okay. I have relied on you to do this, and you have let me down for the last time. Don't know what that's about. Don't know who it is directed at, but good for you. That's learning that lesson. A lot of times we get into that space where our hope that people will change and finally stop doing the things that they're doing to hurt you or what have you, or even themselves. The hope gets in the way of what we know the reality is. And the reality is that you can hope all you want, but that is not going to change a person. That person needs to change themselves, period. And when we get to this space where we all of a sudden have this realization that they're not going to change, it's very liberating, even though it is very sad at the same time. But it also gives us the opportunity to love them for who they are, not who we want them to be. That's a big deal. And I think for women especially, we do this all the time. Where here's my man, and oh my God, he's so spectacular. And everybody else is just like, he's kind of a douchebag. I'm just saying, no, he's not. He's gonna be great eventually, right? 20 years down the road, nothing has changed. He's the same man that he always was. But this woman is still sitting there going, it's okay. Someday he's gonna be great. She's living on hope. Okay. She wasted the last 20 years of her life on a man that would not give anything to her. Okay. That's not living. That's continuing to hope that something is going to change simply because you will it to change, right? But we have to take other people into consideration and who they are. And some people are just incapable of taking the time to make the decision to change. And sometimes the only thing that does get them to do that is us walking away and saying, I'm done dealing with your crap. Okay. And they wind up changing, and it's too late at that particular point. That's not on you. Okay. You tried, you put the time in. Um, you're not the jackass whisperer. Okay. You don't have to be. Nobody said that you had to be. Mm. That being said, this is also happening to get these people out of the way so that you can focus on you and your goals, your needs, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, which is a big deal, right? And you've been putting that aside for a long time, waiting on these other people to be ready. Sometimes Well, doing that sounds, it's so nice that you made that sacrifice for them. Well, actually, we're just using him as an excuse. Okay. So this is also liberating. It's giving you the opportunity to take that excuse away so that you can focus on the big, scary part of your own growth, your own success, your own, oh my God, what am I going to do? And that's what Mercury and Venus are focused on. They're focused on your long-term goals. What are my goals for next year? What am I going to accomplish? Believe it or not, it's really important that you set goals for the year. I'm going to try with all of my might to do a moon manifestation starting in December and do it monthly because it helps. It helps keep us on track with our goals. So I will definitely let you know if I'm able to get that together, which I think I should be pretty, pretty confident that I'll be able to do that. Okay, King of Swords. Swords are all about logic and determination and strength. They're the air sign of the minor cards. The King of Swords in this position indicates wise, mature, professional, intellectual genius, and also indicates self-improvement. So this is all about you. It's about you not necessarily separating yourself from the herd, the people around you that aren't getting anywhere, but it is time to step out of, I don't want to grow past these people either, because let's face it, you're going to, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't want to let other people get in the way of our growth. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Peg, the sun is officially in Sagittarius, although it's not officially your birthday yet, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be yet. And the sun is, Mars is also still in Sagittarius as well. Mars not interacting with any planets whatsoever. Very strange. But that's because the sun is interacting with all the planets. And that's probably why that is. Sun in opposition with Uranus. First of all, the sun's focus is on long-term career goals. Uranus is retrograde, focused on the mind. So we have some tricky, tricky, tricky mind stuff going on, preventing things from moving forward. It's not just Mercury being retrograde, although that does end at the end of this week, late Thursday, early Friday. But it's more about how we get on our own way, right? And a lot of times a negative or pessimistic mindset definitely gets in the way of things. So, number one, I would say that when it comes to your long-term career goals, you definitely don't want to be looking at all of the things that remind you of times in your career that were bad. I mean, obviously, yes, we get to a point where we sort of pigeonhole ourselves into a corner and we do nothing. And I think that that's actually pretty common in our business, honestly. Um, for instance, the readings. Number one, where's my love life? Can't, where's my man? Blah, 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 blah. You get all these people, especially women, but I've seen a lot of men too, and they're so wrapped up in that one thing. They refuse to hear anything else. That's annoying. The people that won't leave you alone, that's annoying. The people that take advantage, that's annoying. The people that don't want to pay, that's annoying. There's so many different parts of being in this business that are just so incredibly annoying and just like, why? I don't want to spend my life like this, right? And they become so much bigger than the parts of being in this business that bring joy, like being able to help somebody, like being able to save somebody from making a really bad choice. And I have to be specific about it. I have to really force myself to look back over my career and say to myself, there was that one girl who had that guy and he was stalking her. And I said, you go to the police right now and you get a, it's a restraining order. I was so scared for this girl. And you know what she did? And she got away from him and she got married and she's so much happier. She's got children. You know, her life is completely different. I'm so glad I was a part of that, you know, and that I helped her make that choice because God knows what could have happened to that man. Or this other poor girl who was told, you know, years prior by a psychic that she was going to be dead by the time she was 24. And so she didn't decide to stop doing drugs because of that and reverse that. She did more drugs. She tried to fulfill that prophecy. Luckily, I got to her just in time and, you know, and explained to her, you don't have to fulfill that prophecy. And she cleaned up. She's a mom now. She's doing great, as far as I know. This was many, many years ago. But the point is that I have saved lives and you have saved lives. And all of the annoying people in the world can't take that away from us, right? There's instances where we've saved lives and we didn't even know that we saved lives. And, you know, so what we do is important. And even though a lot of people don't, um, take it seriously, the people that need to really do, and that's what's important. The good thing is also the sun is part of a grand trine with Jupiter. Jupiter's focus is on your day-to-day schedule. It is retrograde, so it's taking stuff off your plate instead of putting more on your plate, giving you more time to focus on these long-term goals. Also with Saturn and Neptune. Neptune is still retrograde, although Saturn's retrograde ends at the end of this week. Neptune is all about intuition. Its focus is on self. It's utilizing your intuition to make this decision. And remember, you have a very strong intuition. Don't forget that. Really important that you don't forget that. So even though there's challenges, there's also ways around that at the same time. You're never going to have something that's obviously just smooth sailing. You get right in and there's no problems, right? Why we keep thinking that that's going to happen, I don't know. I just don't know. Um, Even those of us that are intuitive still think that that's going to happen. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But, you know, I digress. We are who we are. We're humans. And we're really good at wasting time. Okay. We're really, really good at that. Um, but this is sort of like it's the holiday. It's a good time to waste time, but it's also a good time to keep your mind focused on the future and what you want that future to look like. And that is more in your control than some days you realize. So give yourself the space to focus on that, but give yourself the space to take a break from it as well, because that's really important. The Seven of Swords is the card that I am picking up for you today in reverse. Interesting, interesting. Seven of Swords in this position indicates indicates a return of something lost or taken and the resolution of conflicts. Not a bad deal, not a bad way to end the last week of the Mercury retrograde. So that is what I have for you. And finally, moving on to Mama Sherry, the sun is in Sagittarius. It is Sagittarius season. Everybody run and hide. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We still have Mars in Sagittarius too, putting lots of energy towards your career, but he's not really interacting with anybody right now. He's just kind of sort of floating along doing his thing, putting a lot of energy into your career. The sun, however, is focused on long-term career goals. So we have Saturn putting energy into what you're doing now, and the sun, which is spearheading, what are we going to do from here on out, which is a really important question for us to ask ourselves, right? Now, the sun is in opposition with Uranus this week, which does provide a challenge because Uranus is retrograde and focused on the mind, and that's where the stinking thinking lives. And so that stinking thinking is sort of coming up, and getting in the way. You've got these plans, and your mind is talking you out of giving you a million reasons why these plans aren't a good idea, or you're not going to be able to achieve them, or blah, 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 whatever, right? But to counter all this crap, the sun is in a grand trine with Jupiter, which is retrograde, taking things off of your plate on a day-to-day basis, not putting more on, as well as Neptune and Saturn. Now, Saturn is going direct at the end of this week, but Neptune is all about that intuition, focusing that intuition on self, reminding you that you are extremely intuitive and that your intuition is there to help you, which is, of course, as it's always been, right? It's amazing how many times we have to be reminded of that, but we do, right? Because we're human just like everybody else. And because we're human just like everybody else, we forget stuff, right? Or we don't do readings for a long time, and then what's the automatic thought? Well, I'm probably not very good at it anymore, right? Then you connect with somebody, and then you realize that that's not the case. You didn't forget anything. You're still there. You're still doing it. You're still awesome. You can still connect with the dead. Good for you. You can eliminate that excuse, right? So I would say this. A lot of times when we look at our long-term goals, we tend to get stuck on the particulars. Well, I don't know how to do this. No, I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure how this is going to go. Blah, 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 blah. Listen, here's the deal. The second we stop doing that, second, we can paint a picture of what that is supposed to look like. The next step is to find the people that can help us with the stuff that we don't know, right? It's just like when we go back to writing, all those people saying, you've got to write a book, you got to write a book, you got to write a book. And you did not want to do that. And you didn't want to do it for years because it turned out you were dyslexic as a child. Your spelling isn't that great. It's a fear, right? But you get somebody to edit the book. You write it out with all the misspellings and whatever happens. And then you hand it to me. And what do I do with it? I correct all the spelling and I correct all the grammar and I give it back to you perfect, right? That's how it is. Okay. People who write books don't write books because they're perfect spellers and really good at grammar and English. They do it because they have something to put out there and they have somebody fix it for them when they're not good at it, right? My mom did that. King of Cups in reverse is the card that I'm pulling for you today, which is interesting. King of Cups in reverse. Possessiveness, jealousy, need to be more secure and positive about future, everything in moderation. When I hear everything in moderation, I think of you eating too many Twinkies before bed and it giving you an upset stomach. But the possessiveness and the jealousy, I don't feel that's coming from you. I feel like it's coming from somebody around you and it's affecting you. And you have the choice to allow it to affect you or to kind of put it in a place where it's supposed to be, if that makes any sense at all. You can talk to this person and explain to them, hey, I've got plenty of time for you, but I have to spread this time out with other people, at the same time. And if they have a problem with it, it's their problem and not yours. So that is what I have for you. And that is what I have for everybody. Now, I hope that this recording has been okay. There's no issues with it. I'm about to find out. I will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you all on the other side of that.